Hey guys, what is up? Kid here of Burn One with the Shadowverse Evolved channel, bringing you another deck profile, this time on Egg Haven Craft. So the Egg Bird deck is one that has been talked about leading up into this set. It's considered probably one of the top decks. I'd probably say like within the top 4 range for sure. And it has a lot of cool play patterns that you just have to kind of get used to and to burn your opponent out by cracking some eggs. So let's get right into it. Alright, so this is the deck itself. We'll just get right into it. First off, our lovely Fable Goblin here, Actress Faria. This is how we get more tokens onto our Tin Man. We burn people out using Fable counters. We're going to be moving Fable counters constantly to our Tin Man whenever we have one, just to be able to burn people out that way. And then occasionally we'll be moving Fable counters over to our Rapunzel, so it'll be able to attack occasionally. Bellringer Angel, very solid card, doesn't need an introduction. One of the cool things about this card in this list is that if you're not playing it against an aggressive list, but you field Bellringers onto the board, when you get around to playing Humpty Dumpty and blowing up your own board and their board, if you have Bellringers on the board, that'll let you go ahead and draw some extra cards from its last word. That way you don't end up with a 0-card hand after using your Humpty Dumpty every time. Dark Offering is a solid piece in this deck. It kind of shores up our consistency while also helping us outlive some of the aggro matchups, because Sword being one of them is incredibly crazy, especially if they get their turn 3 heroic entry. We need ways to slow them down, need ways to heal just a little bit, and in the mirror matches is pretty good because any extra heal means they have to spend a little bit more to end the game. Also, it works very well in conjunction with the next card here, which is Princess Snow White. So this is another new card. It's very, very powerful. It's probably one of the most powerful wards right now for Havencraft to be playing, especially at a low curve like this. 2-drop ward that's a 2/2. If this card was put into the field from your hand, put a Fable counter on it. And if it was not put into the field from your hand, it gets +1/+1. So it's essentially gets recycled. So you get to play this card twice. Or you can put Fable counters back onto it, pop it with like Dark Offering or run it into something, and then reuse it again. It's a really, really powerful card in that sense because of the utility of being able to cycle Snow White over and over again to slow down our opponent or generate a 3/3. And this card also works very well with our Humpty Dumpty game plan. If we have Snow White on the board already and we use Humpty Dumpty Evo to blow up the board and deal some burn damage, this will get sent to our EX zone if there's a Fable counter on it, and then that lets us replay it again as a 3/3. It's a very cool, interesting interaction there, and this card is probably going to be a staple for quite a while. Surefire Bullet is back in the force of 3 here. We are somewhat of a control deck in the sense that we just want to control the field, get rid of anything off the board that we don't want to see early on. This deals 3 damage, which is like the perfect sweet spot against non-evos right now. And then against evos, it deals 4, which obviously we're going to be able to gun down other people who play Alice. We'll be able to just pay 2 play points to just remove their Alice and things like that. Very solid card. It comes back now because we're going to see a lot less Uma around. Uma still being a powerful deck, but we won't see it as often anymore. Another new card. This is a super powerful card for the deck, Alice's Adventure. So it's an Amulet Fanfare. Search your deck for a Fable card, reveal it, add to your hand. So if you ever draw this and turn 2 you play it, you can just search out your Alice for turn 3. It always makes it so it like helps generate like a very good curve for the first few turns of the game. So as long as you see this on 2 and not see an Alice, you'll at least be able to play this to be able to get an Alice for turn 3. The secondary effect comes up occasionally, but almost never. That's why we have Dark Offering in here. So if we feel like we don't need the Russian Assail effect to be able to clear something, we can just use Dark Offering to pop this away and then recycle this amulet later with another card I'll be playing this list. Alice Wonderland Explorer. This is the huge payoff, or not payoff, but like the engine for Fable, as you've seen in prior lists. Alice here, obviously coming into play, gets a Fable counter, and then you can remove a Fable counter from this to put a Fable counter onto another Fable follower. And then it has the Evo effect. So we have the 3 of Evo here of Alice here. On Evolve, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You put up to 2 Fable cards among them into your EX area, put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order, and then same effect of being able to remove Fable counters and rearrange them around. So what's really good about Alice in this is that it lets us stack Fable counters into our Tin Soldier. It also puts cards into our EX zone. So once we get our Humpty Dumpty off and we lose our hand, we're not playing with a 0-card hand. We're basically just playing with an open card hand now. Next card, this is the key sake of the deck, the Reason you'll be playing this is Humpty Dumpty. It's a 3-cost 3/3, evolves for 0, which is insane because on evolve it deals 5 damage to each follower on the field, including itself. So it generally blows up your own board and your opponent's board. It's a turn 3 conflag essentially, and then deal 3 damage to each enemy leader, and then you have to discard your hand. So this is why Alice is so good in this list when playing with Humpty Dumpty, is that most of your hand advantage gets stuck into your EX area, which means when you get to the point of discarding your hand for Humpty Dumpty Evo, it doesn't feel as bad because you still have all the cards in your EX area to work with. The only, I would say, somewhat of a downside I've experienced while playing versus this list and, you know, playing this list a little bit myself is that, you know, once you put everything into your EX area and you Humpty Dumpty and you have a 0-card hand, your opponent knows every card you have and can play around everything, and all they really have to worry about is the top card of your deck. A lot of times though, when it's in that scenario, it's your opponent just hoping you don't top deck something to burn out the game. Rapunzel, we play this as a 3/4/5 ward, and it can't attack enemies unless it has a Fable counter on it. So this card is insane. It slows down the sword matchup by a ton. Like, this is the big turn 3 play. If you don't have allies, you play this, you tell your opponent go ahead, and then now they have to deal with this 4/5 ward while playing into Rapunzel as sword. For example, I've multiple times had to remove or use 2 followers to just remove Rapunzel because it was just that annoying as a 3-drop. Card is super amazing. It puts in a lot of work in the aggro matchups and occasionally can just swing in for 4, which is absolutely annoying. Tin Soldier, this is another big payoff for the deck as well. What's so great about Tin Soldier is this is the way we're going to burn people out and machine gun down any followers that we are really annoyed with. So Tin Soldier's effect is fanfare. If this card was put onto the field from anywhere other than your hand, put a Fable counter on it. So if you get it from the EX area, it comes in with a Fable counter. You can move Fable counters from Alice to just start stacking them there, and then bring Tin Soldier out, and then like remove 3 Fable counters off of it to do 6 damage. And speaking of removing Fable counters, the secondary effect is if you remove a Fable counter from this card, select an enemy leader or enemy follower on the field and deal 2 damage to it. And this card, for some reason, is a 3/4, which in my opinion, it seems a little bit much. A 3/4 that's not an Evo is just really hard to remove sometimes and like swing into. So it has some sticking power and all that for Tin Soldier. It's a very, very good card. You're going to be winning a lot of your games off of Tin Soldier plays, including like using Humpty Dumpty to like slowly whittle away their life total. Explosion is another key burn spell we'll be using in this list. Explosion is a 3-drop spell, deals X damage to each follower on the field and each enemy leader, where X equals the number of cards named Explosion or Humpty Dumpty in your cemetery +1. There are a lot of times where you'll just be playing this for like 2 damage to the board because there's just a bunch of like 2 power followers against like sword, for example, or even against Fable Forest. Sometimes their boards are relatively low health, so like 2 to 3 damage to the entire board will just like kind of clear up everything for you. And every time you have to do that, you're just getting some extra bonus damage in there as well against the enemy leader, which means you can just slowly burn them down even quicker when needed. There are times too where this card is just like insane top decks, things like that. You get it off of Alice's Evo fanfare, and you're like, oh sweet, I've already like Humpty Dumpty twice and have 1 explosion in there. You're like, I just burned forward to the entire board and you, oh, good game. Just clear up everything. It's a very annoying card, that's for sure. So this is a piece that I picked to play in my list. It's not needed in every list. One, I just like Midgame McQueen, and I really like all her effects. I wish I spent more time in the last meta using her, so I'm trying her out now a little bit more, and I've enjoyed her a lot. So obviously her fanfare is put an amulet from your field into its own cemetery, selects an enemy leader or enemy follower on the field and deal 3 damage to it. So this has some extra reach for us because, like I said earlier, Alice's Adventure is an amulet we don't really care about too much on as far as using the effect. And so we can pop it using this is one of the ways. But what's so nice is that the Evo lets us recycle a amulet off in their cemetery. So on Evolve, you select the amulet in your cemetery and add it to your hand. So after you pop Alice's Adventure using Midgame McQueen, we can just go ahead and bring it back to our hand to search again. Other times too, there are times where you just get this back after popping Alice's Adventure, just so you can reuse the 4-drop effect and into the 2-drop effect again. It's insane. It's a really good card. On top of that, the card has Ward and it's a 5/5. It being at 5 health too is relevant later in the game too, as you'll see once I'll talk about the White Swan. So here's another key piece that makes this deck obnoxious in a way. This is a 4-drop Amulet, Fanfare, March's Hair, Tea Time. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may put a Fable follower that costs 5 play points or less from among them into your field. Put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. As you notice, all our Fable cards are 5 or less, which means like everything you can hit here will be able to be going into play. The only things like that kind of screw you over if like you don't hit a Fable off of the top 5, which would be insane, is like 3 Bellringer Angels, 2 Dark Offerings, 3 Surefires, 1 Midgame McQueen. Everything else is Fable for the most part. I guess Explosion doesn't count because it's not a follower, but you know what I mean. Card's insane. And then it has a secondary effect where you can pay to engage this, put this into your cemetery, select a Fable follower that costs 3 play points or less in your cemetery and put it onto your field. Hey, look at that. Humpty Dumpty costs 3. So does Alice in Wonderland Explorer. Cost 3. Sometimes you might even just get a Snow White if needed. It's crazy, and I've seen plays too where we've had to get this back out to get an extra Fable counter to close out games that way too. It's been pretty funny when it does happen that way. But your key pieces are both 3 or less, being Alice and Humpty Dumpty, which means you can recycle those cards to get even more card advantage that way. And like I said, once this is in cemetery, you can use Midgame McQueen to bring it back to your hand and play it again next turn. It's an insane card in my opinion. One of the other cards that you can get off of the top deck here is Pinion Prince, which also lets you recycle Fable cards, which is insane. So you get so much advantage through just random top decks in this deck. It's just really obnoxious. All right, next card here. This is a one of Odette White Swan. So what's really nice about this card is, one, it heals you, but it on play and when it gets removed from the board, but it also enables 2 different things here. So it gives 2 health to your other followers and yourself. The big thing is your other followers. So a lot of times when you have explosion turns, but you might have a board that you kind of want to hold on to later in the game. Say you have an Evo Dallas on here, it has 4 health. Suddenly you play White Swan out on with 5 play points. Then with your last 3 play points, you use Humpty Dumpty, Evo it to clear the board. Now your Alice lives, Midgame McQueen will live, Pinion Prince will live, which means yes, they're going to be at low health life totals for your followers, but they lived through an explosion, or not explosion, through a Humpty Dumpty, and that provides extra pressure onto your opponent. They'll be easy to remove because they'll have a low life total, but they'll still be around. And the big thing too is that this lives with 1, and when it gets removed at 1 HP, you know, you get a heal 2 and so forth. So, and your followers as well. So there's times where like this comes out and you remove it even with Dark Offering just to like re-heal your entire board after swinging with this or something. It's a nice tech card. I really like it so far. There are some plays sometimes where if you have this on the board, or if you have this in your EX area from using Alice or something, this card makes math very annoying for your opponent. They'll have to make trades that they normally wouldn't have when they're trying to play aggressive to like set up lethal, because if they don't, suddenly your board becomes unstoppable. Like imagine having a Rapunzel out followed by a White Swan here, and it's just really hard to get through that, and it requires them to like use 2 to 3 cards just to get through the Rapunzel now, which is insane. Card's super good. I like it a lot. It's been a very good one of overall, and in the list I've seen play it so far, it's been great. I like the card. Pinion Prince is another card that is obnoxious. So this is a 4/5 on Fanfare. Select a Fable card in your cemetery, put it into your EX area, and then you may put a Fable counter on it. So you'll be using this a lot of times to get back Tin Soldier, so you can stack a bunch of Fable counters on it. There are a lot of plays where you're like, Pinion Prince, bring a Tin Soldier into the EX area, it gains a Fable counter, move this out into the field, it gains a Fable counter, engage Actress for another Fable counter, remove 3 Fable counters to deal 6 damage to end the game that way. I've seen weird things happen like that, and weird plays like that, so you have to be very aware of all the type of different plays you can to burn out your opponent. Obviously, like, even though this doesn't seem like an aggro deck, this is very much a aggro deck in the sense that we're burning our opponent, and we just have a lot of tools that like help us stop our opponent from swinging into us early, so we can get to that mid to late game to like burn our opponent out. We played 2 of the Evo. The Evo is not amazing, but it has the keyword to sell, which is really important. It's one of the few ways we can interact with our opponent's board if they choose not to engage a follower. And 5/6 is still pretty big. It lives through explosion in the mirror, and when you use your own, or not explosion, I'm sorry, Humpty Dumpty, and makes it just annoying enough for your opponent to deal with. But that's generally the deck. From playtesting so far, it's been a lot of fun. Playing against Humpty Dumpty has been incredibly annoying. It's probably one of my favorite deck, if not the deck I think is the most fun to play in the current meta. The only other deck I think I have as much fun playing is the Heroic Sword. Heroic Sword is just such fun to gamble with that deck, also just using Heroic Entry, that it's a toss-up between this deck and Heroic Sword on which deck I like the most during this meta. But that kind of wraps up this deck profile. I think I've kind of covered everything. You just got to be very aware of when is a good time. Do I need to discard my hand now to use a Humpty Dumpty? Sometimes you're just going to be forced to do it, and you have to play off the top of your deck for the rest of the game, which is really rough in those really aggro matchups. And that's why we're playing a lot more of these lower curve Warbs and like 3 Rapunzels. But once you start understanding the setups, generating Alice's onto the board to start building your hand and discarding your hand with Humpty Dumpty, you'll start to see the lines of play that are a lot of fun, and just finding very cool ways to find lethal against your opponent. It's a lot of fun, and it really makes your brain hurt sometimes when you think about certain plays. But you'll really much enjoy this deck if you like playing a burn type of deck. This is definitely a meta where Haven is going to do pretty decent. I'm sure for trios we're going to see this on most teams, honestly. If not, I'd be really surprised, because I think this list, or not the specific list, but this deck archetype is very good and I feel like has a 50-50 matchup basically into everything. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and enjoying our content. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate it so much. I appreciate all of you for even making it to the end of this video. With that being said, we'll see you in the next video. Later, everyone.